like, it's really frustrating when schools are just like, oh, there's like one way of learning,
Right.
because that's what I thought. Like, I was like, well, how else do you learn? And it's like, well, there's through accommodations, through, different avenues. Like, I don't have to go right. I could go left. I could pick B instead of A. And that's like a big part of being dyslexic too, is like, I just think through things differently. And I really love that about myself. But yeah, it really like gave me the like, okay, to start exploring other avenues of learning and other accommodations, and like, what do I truly need to be successful? And that was like the first time that I'd kind of like asked myself those questions, instead of just being like, oh, well, you're just not trying hard enough.
This is Megan, owner of Dyslexia On Demand.
And I'm Eryn, owner of Advocate to Educate.
And we are the Don't Call on Me podcast.
We are here to talk about dyslexia, to remove the stigma, to hear what families really go through, and to share their stories.
In both of our businesses and personal experiences on a daily basis, we listen to people telling their stories. Many of heartbreak, many of struggle, but most all have a silver lining, even eventually.
It's all about the stories. The more we share, the more we realize we aren't alone and we are a community. No, a tribe standing together. The Don't Call on Me podcast is brought to you by Dyslexia On Demand and Advocate to Educate.
Welcome back, listeners, to the Don't Call on Me podcast. We're so glad that you chose to tune in today. If you haven't already, give us a follow or leave a quick rating, because it really helps bring those important stories to more ears. So today we are thrilled to welcome someone whose story is a powerful reminder of the strength and purpose that can come from challenge. So Matt is a passionate advocate and communicator working in the nonprofit space for neurodiversity. And today we're here to talk about his personal dyslexia journey and how that led him to the work that he does now. So welcome, Matt, to the Don't Call Me podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate that. My name is Matt Pashby. I am originally from San Francisco and currently live in New Orleans, Louisiana, going on 10 years next month. I come from a large family. I have 5 siblings, a great system of advocates out there. But I work now at the Neurodiversity Alliance as the assistant director of development and donor relations.
So, Matt, can you start off by telling us about your early elementary years, kind of your first memories of school, and what that was like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first memories of school was actually kindergarten. I remember one of the things we had to do was count to 100. Like, that was like a mile, like a benchmark, like that we had to get to. And I could not get to 100. Like, it was like, if you got to 100, you got to go outside to recess. So it was like one by one, everybody's going out. Like, I think there was like 35 kids in my class. And then we were down to 5. And there was 5 of us who could not do it. And for whatever reason, I couldn't get through the 70s. So it was just like, I would like fully skip the 70s. And it was so frustrating for me, because that was like the first time I was kind of like, what is going on with my brain? Like, why am I not able? And it was so frustrating, like watching everybody one by one get out of there. And I just remember, like, they kept telling me, they're like, get your 70s, get your 70s. And I was like, in my mind, repeating that to myself. And then I would kind of like I would repeat so much that I would do it at the wrong time. And that went on for like days. And it was like days. And then finally, I got it after like 3 days of counting to 100. So those were like my earliest memories. And getting like a little bit further along, I just had such challenges with reading, writing, spelling was my big one. Spelling was like such a challenge for me. And then a bit of like reading comprehension. But I kept being told that I was just lazy and I wasn't trying hard enough. They're like, oh, Matt, like, you're so smart. Like, we know you can do this, but like, you're just not applying yourself. So I was like passed off it felt like kindergarten through like 8th grade. It was just like every year I was getting passed off with C's, with like really borderline, like they were just like, okay, like your grades are good enough to move on. So we're just going to move you on And there was like talk of like maybe getting me tested, maybe I was learning differently, but it was like when everybody would sit down and the teachers would talk about it, it was like, no, he's just lazy. Like he just doesn't want to apply himself. So like after a while, I was like, okay, yeah, like I am lazy. Like I do like not want to apply myself. And I wasn't applying myself later on in school.
Yeah. So explain to us, you mentioned that you went from trying the best that you can to then being told you were lazy, and then kind of that turning into what you ended up doing because that was your coping skill, I'm assuming. Like if everyone's telling you you're lazy, then you're going to internalize that. So for you, were there things that you didn't want to do in front of your peers? Were you the kid that was like hiding when reading? Were you ever teased? Things like that. How did you get around what you had to do performance-wise?
Yeah, and it's so interesting the name of y'all's podcast. When I like Don't Call on Me, it was like literally do not call on me. Like I was such a fiery energy, like I said, outside of the classroom. Once I was like at my desk, I was like, do not call on me, do not speak to me. Like I don't want to make a mistake in front of, which I've done so many times. So there was a lot of things where like reading out loud as younger, I would say probably up until like 7th or 8th grade, I was just not comfortable doing. I hated writing, and like I had great thoughts, but I couldn't translate it onto paper. And my handwriting, I never properly learned how to hold a pen or pencil. To this day, like my handwriting is pretty atrocious. So I was really self-conscious about that. Like writing on the chalkboard, I was like, do not make me, especially if it was math. I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like math minutes was like one of the scariest things for me as a child. And I was like, anything to avoid that, because that was another situation where like it reminded me of counting, like with the numbers, like counting to 100. It was like everybody's done. And like I'm still here, and it's like I need 30 more like I can do it, but it's like I need another math minute. Like I was like, I can't do it in 1 minute. Like give me 2. So that was like, I found myself really avoiding like volunteering for anything academically, raising my hand. Like I felt like I had a lot of good stuff to say, even to a point where like I knew my answer was correct. I was like, I don't want to risk the opportunity to like mess it up or like say something wrong. And I really started to just like feel like I was not as smart as everybody else. Like I was the laziness turned into me just being like, no, I'm just not smart. Like I'm just not an intelligent kid. And I was like, well, where does that lead me to like, I was the kid who was like always thinking like, to my future and like what I do. And it got to a point where like, I just stopped because I was like, I don't see this like big future for me as other peers did.
So at what age would you say, because like listening to everything, it sounds like you had an internal confidence, but then you lost it. What age would you say you started telling yourself that you were dumb?
Inner voice, I would probably say like 3rd, 4th grade. And most people who are diagnosed with learning differences are between 1st and 3rd grade, and I was not. Like I missed kind of that period of time. I wasn't diagnosed until I was a sophomore in high school. So it took me a long time to finally get any answers. And I would say, yeah, like 3rd, 4th grade were really like really challenging years for me. I remember everybody was reading, like they were talking about like the books that they'd like finally read, and like and when I finally read a book, it was like 4th grade, and I remember it was a Dr. Seuss book, very like Simbo's Hop on Pop by Dr. Seuss, and I would like tell some of my friends and like, oh, like that's it, like oh, like just like, or like teacher, like so it was like I was, even when I was like, oh, I hit like my own milestones, like it wasn't received well. Nobody was excited for me. My family were huge supporters. My Nana, one of my biggest supporters, she was a special education teacher for 30 years in the San Mateo County School District. And then my younger brother was very clearly ADHD, and he was diagnosed, I think 2nd or 3rd grade. He's about 2 years younger than me. So he was like, it was like quick. They jumped on that. He got tested. Teachers were like, oh yeah, like we gotta get this And my parents were big advocates for me, but they were also told that I was just not applying myself. So there was challenges with that too, of like, we're not really getting the support from the school that like you would need to go get that testing to move forward. We had all the tools, like we had all of the resources, but I was just a kid that was like passed on like all the time. So had the support, had all the tools. It just like didn't get the approval from school. And I'd also always see the kids that got extended time and went to resource. And like part of me like outwardly was like, oh, I don't want to be that kid. But then internally I was like, I kind of knew that like I should be there. And I was like, kind of like, oh my God, I hope one day like somebody will let me join the extended time kids.
That kills me. I was just going to say that kills me because you saw what you needed and you didn't, even though you had, like you said, you had a loving family, you had the resources. It's just nobody knew. It sounds like there were no adults in your, whether it was the educators that had the knowledge to bring to you and your family to say, hey, listen, because and this is what Megan and I talk about all the time. If these teachers and our current teachers in the school system would just do a 20-minute training on dyslexia, it would change the trajectory of all of the kids coming through their classroom. I mean, it's a ripple effect, right? So imagine the impact that small knowing of the adults in your second grade classroom, had they just been able to see that you weren't lazy, that was not what was going on.
Yeah.
But also to like challenge themselves when they make big judgments, like slapping a lazy label on you, because I believe truly in my heart of hearts that it is just human nature that we want to succeed. We want to do all of those things, be part of the group, and achieve and feel that internal pride. So generally, like something like lazy, it seems like dig deeper, because there is another answer, because that is not what we are compelled to do, like just as part of who we are, like just human makeup and desires. And it upsets me because teachers will make big statements like that, such as saying a child, for example, will never read and telling their parents that. And it still happens now. And it's so disheartening to think, well, why is that? And what could I do better? Now, I'm not saying teachers, because not all teachers have the training to be able to unlock the dyslexic code, but, just kind of go down a different rabbit hole here.
So you had this label, you lived it, you worked that label, and then come middle school, what changed? What happened?
Yeah, so it wasn't until 7th or 8th grade. We had one of our the 8th grade teacher, homeroom teacher, taught science to 7th graders. And she was the first person who was like, yeah, I think there's something else going on here. Like, she met with my mom. She had a really good rapport with my parents. And it was also great because my Nana ended up being the 2nd grade aide at my elementary school when I was in 6th grade, she joined. So it was great to have like another advocate, at least in the building. But she had met with all of them and been like, look, I don't think he's lazy. Like, I don't think he's not applying himself. If anything, he's applying himself more than others. He's just not getting the same outcomes because of the way that he's, been set up for success. And she had started that conversation in 7th grade, and we had continued to discuss that in 8th grade. Like I said, it wasn't until sophomore year where I officially was diagnosed, but the conversation had been started, and it was something where I started to like change my outlook on things. My grades got better. They still weren't incredible, but it was in 8th grade, we had to start applying to high schools. I went to private Catholic school my whole life, and applying to the private Catholic schools in San Francisco was really challenging. Like, the acceptance rates were lower than any college I applied to. And there was one school that I really wanted to go to. And I remember we were sitting in class, and as like a math like equation, they're like, okay, like what are everyone's chances of getting in, like based off like where you live, demographics, like all that. And I had like a less than like 10% chance of getting in. And I was like, I still want to go. I was like, I want to go. Like, that's where I want to be. And I applied and I was waitlisted. And it was like really, really tough for me because the next day is when everybody comes in their high school sweatshirts and gets to like show off where they're like, yeah. So I was like, I didn't get to, and then that's like, there was like, I think out of the like 11 or the 35 kids in my class, like 11 people had gotten in, and a lot were like my really close friends. And like, they were kind of like tiptoeing around it. I was too, but I was like, you know what? I was waitlisted. I was like, I wasn't rejected. And I was like, I'm going to use the social skills, like the advocacy skill, like I'm going to use that like fiery outside of the classroom energy that I have, and I'm getting in. Like I contacted like anyone who would write me a letter of rec. I was like sending emails. And it was like about a week and a half period where they made their decision. And I pushed like really, really hard. I was like, I want to go here. And I got it, and I got in. And that was like a huge, huge game changer for me. That was like something where I was like, okay, like, although I'm not the A+ student, I was like, I can work a room. Like I can chat it up. Like I can, and the admissions director, when I first got into high school, I remember him seeing me. He was like, "You're Matt Pashby." And I was like, yeah. He was like, I have never been more like hounded and like pressed by people for an application.
What I think is interesting about your story and what you just said is that it wasn't that you like got intervention and got really confident in reading and then applied. It was that you didn't let your whatever was going on with reading, spelling, math get in your way despite how hard it was. And the intervention, we hear a lot of stories of we got intervention and then I was able to, which speaks to your core, your character, your values, all the things that are still within you despite any of your challenges. And that's critical that we pinpoint.
Not just that, you knew yourself at that age as to what your key strengths were, and you had like an amazing confidence. And I always say that confidence has like, it's one of the 3 pillars of success, and your intelligence level is not even a pillar or how much you function. And I'm proud of you, I think, as a mom of a son at that exact same age right now, right? That most kids do not have that innate confidence and desire and willingness. At that age, you just let a door close in your face. Oftentimes, it's just because it's maturity. Yeah. So now you're in this high school that you had aspired to be in. You achieved that. At what point did the dyslexia diagnosis occur?
Yeah, so once I joined high school, it was very academically rigorous. Like I was like in this world where I was like, oh my gosh, did I make the right decision? Especially with finals. Finals were really tough for me. We had obviously by semester, so 2 different finals throughout freshman year. Did not do well. And it was in my sophomore year, I'd gone through testing and finally received my actual accommodations. But the hardest part about the accommodations was finals were 3 days long. I had accommodations, but I wouldn't say it was like successful, like a successful finals for me, because I had like no clue how to utilize them. I had no clue what to do with them. And then I was in this like new environment that I'd never even had a classroom in the 400s building. So I was like, just like, where do I go? But yeah, my first finals with accommodations were horrible. Like there was parts of me where I was like, I want to go back to the regular classroom because I don't know what is going on here. And from sophomore year on, like my college counselors were like, okay, well, like you're probably just going to go to community college. And I was like, not that I hadn't considered it, but I was like, you're not going to make that decision for me. Like in my mind, I was like, I want to go to a 4-year university. And I was like, that is like what I want to do. And like, that's what I'm going to do. But it was like year after year, it was like, well, why don't you just think about community college? And I was like, I have and I will, but it's not what I want to do.
That being said, I'm curious, like what, aside from getting extra time, how did you end up getting through college? Because it sounds like you never had any formal reading, writing, spelling intervention. And I'm wondering what your workarounds were.
Yeah, so we had in high school, I remember sophomore year, they implemented an iPad program. So we all had to have iPads. Computers, iPads, technology were really, really helpful for me. Audiobooks during finals. I remember there was one of the kids when I was like, what am I allowed to do here? Like, what's going on during finals? He had let me know about audiobooks, or just like things like where the final would be on my iPad and it could read the questions out to me and it could read the different multiple choice. Like those were really helpful for me because I could just listen to it over and over again because I'd read it 3 or 4 times and I'm not comprehending it. Like I was like, I know this is a question. I just don't know what it's saying. Like, so when I could hear it outside of my own head, outside of my own voice, like that was really, really helpful for me. And then such a big part of my change, like was finding community and finding advocates. My freshman year English teacher, I remember he like recognized that I did good. Like I finished with like a B minus and he like recognized that I had good work. Like there was like a lot of good stuff going on. So he recommended me for English honors my sophomore year. He just like, and kids were like, I had a lot of kids that were like, really, they're like, well, what was your grade? Like, I didn't get an honors. How did you get an honors? I was like, well, I had a B minus. And they're like, that's ridiculous. Like, I finished with an A. Like, I got 100 on every assignment. Like, why did you get that? And I was like, I don't know. Like, truly, I didn't really know. But looking back on it, like, I get it. Like, I was inquisitive and I was curious and I asked a lot of really great questions. And that teacher allowed me the space and time to like read and like comprehend things at my own pace. So the comfortability of that was really helpful. I think I was just really striving for like comfortable learning environments. And that carried on into college as well. I had made really good friends with the head of the Student Success Center. And he kind of gave me a lot of tips and tricks of like maneuvering the process of accommodations in college. I had a professor, a history professor, when we were taking like the standard classes you have to take. I was like, I have accommodations and I need a laptop. And he was like, no. He was like, absolutely not. And I was like, oh my God, we're going to do this. Like, come on. Like, after a few weeks of like nothing changing, I finally went and spoke to the Student Success Center and they were like, absolutely not. They're like, he's not going to tell you you can't have that. So we'd ended up actually having a really productive, like they had went to him and kind of were like, he's getting his accommodations. And we had a really productive conversation after that, just about my learning style and like what I need. And like, I might have all these accommodations, but I might not use all of them. It's just like, I need to feel comfortable in the environment that I'm learning in. So the advocates on campus for me were like really, really big because there was times where I'm just like, I don't know where to look, what to find. And it also opened a lot of doors for me, becoming good friends with Brad in the Student Success Center. I ended up doing his summer study abroad in Paris and like really enjoyed that. It was another opportunity to like get outside of my own comfort zone. So it opened a lot of doors, but technology and community and advocates were probably some of my best and biggest resources, and they still are.
That's awesome. I think that I always say, look, I don't know about you, but I don't remember like a thing from high school or college, right? In terms of retaining the actual facts. But it's all about learning more about how to get it done and that you figured out what it is that you need for learning or the style, the environment, the accommodations. And that is sometimes the biggest, that's the most important takeaway. And you got that. So I do have a question before we go forward. When you got a dyslexia diagnosis, what did that do for you? I'm not talking about accommodations, but in terms of how you saw yourself, did that unlock a different level of confidence within yourself?
Yeah, so it was a weird process of like, it was like a sigh of relief because it was like, okay, I have some answers. Like I'm not lazy and I'm not stupid and there's like a reason for like all of the way that I think. But then it also led to like a lot of questions like, what does that mean? Or like, what are the intricacies of it? And I didn't really get those questions answered for myself until I found my communities, whether that was the resource kids during finals or going to the Organizing Institute with Eye to Eye and joining the mentoring community. Like, because I was just asking a lot of questions. So it was one, like a blessing, because I was like, oh my gosh, like I I was like, I don't feel so bad about the way that I learn. But then I was like, okay, well, now I feel like I have to like relearn some things and like dig a little deeper about my learning style, because it gave me the okay to be like, I'm not your standard student. I don't learn like the 30 other kids in my classroom, but I also need to figure out what that means for me. So it was a challenge that took time, but I think towards the end of high school, junior year, senior year, I'd really started to like figure out what kind of learner I was. But I never would have been able to allow myself to like think that way if I didn't get that diagnosis. Like, it's really frustrating when schools are just like, oh, there's like one way of learning,
Right.
because that's what I thought. Like, I was like, well, how else do you learn? And it's like, well, there's through accommodations, through, different avenues. Like, I don't have to go right. I could go left. I could pick B instead of A. And that's like a big part of being dyslexic too, is like, I just think through things differently. And I really love that about myself. But yeah, it really like gave me the like, okay, to start exploring other avenues of learning and other accommodations. And like, what do I truly need to be successful? And that was like the first time that I'd kind of like asked myself those questions, instead of just being like, oh, well, you're just not trying hard enough. Or you're just being like, because I was trying really hard. It's just like, I was giving like 125%, but I was still like, the outcome was still like 50% of my, I don't want to say normal because I don't believe in that, but what the education system deems to be a normal student.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I wanted to ask, who in your family is dyslexic? Do you know who that person is other than you?
There's nobody that's like identified directly like as dyslexic, but there is like a history of undiagnosed learning differences. Like, outside of dyslexia, like my grandpa, my papa, he definitely had ADHD. He could have been dyslexic as well. He was a different time. He was never diagnosed. Right. As I said, my brother, he was like very clear-cut ADHD, and I'm not sure what his final diagnosis was, but there was other things outside of that. So he got the ability, because it was so outwardly there, he had the ability to get diagnosed really early, get his accommodations early. So there's definitely people in the family who could have had those outcomes, and they just weren't really like touched upon. And there was so many similarities, but everybody's like outcome was like really, really different. Like I said, my pop was never diagnosed, probably never even questioned that. My brother diagnosed early, me diagnosed later. And then that also, there was struggles with my brother too, because I remember he got his IEP, and when it expired, the private or the Catholic school system was like, oh, his grades had raised, and they were like, oh, so he's good now. So like, you don't need to get retested. Like, you don't need your IEP anymore. And my mom's like, what are you talking about? Like, this is not something that's going away. So she really had to fight for him to get tested. And we ended up having to spend like quite a bit of money we didn't have to get him those accommodations. But yeah, I would definitely say it runs in the family, and there's probably a lot more that we don't know about.
Well, and you said it perfectly, because our listeners need to know that most of the time, I think it's important that the parents of children, if they're suspecting dyslexia, to reflect on not just formal diagnoses, right? Like, what was your schooling like? Yeah. What were your parents and grandparents' schooling like? And most of the time, if they hated school, that was a clear sign that there was probably something going on for them. And that's enough for us to look at, it being hereditary. All right, Matt, as we wrap up your story, can you share with us, what does dyslexia not mean that you used to think it did?
Yeah, I think for me, especially when I was like first diagnosed with dyslexia and thinking that it was like a problem, like I was like, oh, like this is like I said, when I was diagnosed, it was like a breath of fresh air because I got answers. But at the same time, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm different. And like, this is a problem. And like, this is going to be something that like follows behind me like throughout my whole life. And as I've gotten older and the more experiences that I've had and successes that I've found, I truly, truly believe that it's like an incredible thing. It's like a part of me, and it's something that is actually like really special to me. And I think it's gotten me a lot of my successes. I look at things differently. I analyze things differently. Everybody's going left and I'm going right, or vice versa. And I'm choosing a different path. But that gives me a really different perspective. And that's brought me a lot of success. I wouldn't say it did in high school and college, but like in my professional career, I just get different perspectives. It's made me a more empathetic person. I feel like there's a lot of people with dyslexia who have really strong empathy for others. So it's somewhat of like a superpower, I would say. It's something that like I truly enjoy about myself now. Like I love to joke about it. I love to, show it to tell people. I love to explain it to people. I really, really do think that it is not a problem. It's like a specialty. It's a superpower. It's something that has up-leveled me in my career, my personal life, in so many different areas of my life. It took me some time to recognize that, but once I did, I just feel so much better about it. So that's something too I wish somebody would have told me when I was younger as well. It's a really, really cool thing. And it's a really cool community. There's so many incredible people who have dyslexia. So many people I get to work with, so many people that I've met, podcasters. So it's a really, really special part of my life.
So that's like the perfect softball to go into your work now at the Neurodiversity Alliance. So tell our listeners, if they're not familiar with the Neurodiversity Alliance, what that is all about, what you guys do, and how you contribute.
So yeah, we at the Neurodiversity Alliance, we've been around for over 25 years. We were previously Eye to Eye, where we focused heavily on mentoring, but we've rebranded a little bit over a year ago to the Neurodiversity Alliance, where we include mentoring as we had in the past. We also include clubs on high school and college campuses where students are able to build communities. We offer them opportunities for speakers, for leadership conferences, for engagement at our national summit that we're having next month. So we've really expanded into a club model where people can like build their own communities on campus. And then one of my favorites too is our growth into our scholarship program. Scholarships for neurodiverse youth is often overlooked, and people are looking at grades and milestone markers that are so different for people who have dyslexia or are neurodiverse. And we have built this really great opportunity where we're giving out 25 scholarships every year. And we're not just looking at grade. We're like, we don't really care about the GPA. Like, we want to know like what you're doing in your community, what you're doing for yourself, how are you advocating for yourself and others. And we're not just focused on the four-year institutions. Community colleges, technical schools are things that we're looking at as well. So I've really enjoyed seeing the growth of this organization into something that we are focused heavily on students who had 504s and IEPs. And we did away with that because we also know that that's a privilege to get that.
It is.
Those accommodations, that formal paper that says like, yes, you have it and you can get your accommodation. So we're like, if you have self-identified yourself in this area, like you are welcome here.
Well, I love that. And I know that I think it's just so probably refreshing for parents to learn that when they have a child who has any kind of neurodiversity, that there's a place that they can turn for mentorship. Like when they aren't personally impacted and they don't have the right words to say, providing that kind of that peer connection, or, didn't even have to necessarily be the same age. But I know that we've been sharing you guys with all of our high schoolers and stuff.
So Matt, thank you so very much for sharing today. You remind me a little bit of me and Megan, because I can tell that just like when Megan and I first met, we became very close very quickly when we both knew how much we could talk about dyslexia for days and days and days. And then we instantly were like, I think like we're friend in love because this is the best thing ever. So I feel it from you, and our listeners are certainly going to feel that love as well. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. It's been such a pleasure. So
wonderful.
Today's episode is sponsored by Dyslexia On Demand. Dyslexia On Demand uses only the highest trained dyslexia therapists, and it's all one-on-one and individualized to your child's needs. The best part is that it doesn't matter where you're located because it's all virtual. Visit us at dyslexiaondemand.com to learn more.
Today's episode is sponsored by Advocate to Educate. We help parents navigate through the confusing maze of special education in public schools in California. We support families starting as early as preschool through 12th grade, creating individual education plans to support the specific needs of your unique and amazing child. To learn more, go to our website, advocate2educate.com. That's a wrap on this episode of Don't Call on Me. Remember, dyslexia is part of your story, not the whole story. Stay strong, stay inspired, and we'll see you next time.